Senate Concurrent Resolution 103 would have given the legislature the chance to take a broad look at workforce training in Kentucky and how we spend $900 million annually of state and federal money for workforce education.
And so what is your plan for next session? Are you going to push this again? What road are we going to go down? And what's the real goal of accomplishing here?
Sure. We will be bringing something back next session. I'm excited about the improvements that we're going to have in the upcoming session with the legislation. Having gone through that process, realized some things I'd like to make a little better and stronger. The motivation is when you take a look at the way that we spend that $900 million, and then you take a look at research that says in the year 2020 we're going to miss the target. Missing the target meaning that 2/3 of the opportunities in workforce are going to be for students with some post-secondary education, and only about 50% of those applicants will actually have the credentials they need to fulfill those jobs. So if we're spending $900 million and we're going to miss the target, we need to take a look at how we spend that money, and that's going to be the focus of the legislation.
Now, when coming up with this measure, what kind of approach did you want to take in terms of tackling this problem?
Sure. The ideal approach would have been to file the bill, that silver bullet that we joked about in the discussion in there, and that one single silver bullet fixing it. So instead of doing that, realizing that's too high of a bar, instead of doing that, let's talk about a process by which we can arrive at solution. And not only will we arrive at a solution that will benefit us today, but maybe we can develop a process for arriving at solution that will benefit us in years to come.
Absolutely. Now, what do you think are the biggest issues within the workforce that need to be addressed in this type of issue? Obviously, we just came out with a workforce report that showed soft skills are a huge problem, and obviously this is the biggest problem facing the business community at this point, but there are multiple levels to this, right?
There are multiple levels. Your report's a great foundation for the start of a conversation. Soft skills are vital. Are we doing as much training in soft skills as we can in schools? Are we requiring soft skills in that career-ready piece that KDE recognizes as part of a graduation requirement for a career-ready certification? Are the certifications that we're requiring, work keys, ASVAB, other credentials, are those actually the credentials and certificates that business and industry want? All of those are pieces of the conversation.
And how do we reward schools for training for soft skills and things like that?
Sure. The accountability model right now has schools that will graduate a student that's career ready, they get 1 point for that student. If the student graduates college ready, they get 1 point. If the student graduates college and career ready, they get 1.5 points. The challenge is, are we getting all the bang for the buck we can within that career piece, specific to the alignment of the training, the soft skills, the credentialing? Is all that exactly what business and industry wants? So it's that conversation that may or may not be happening. And in places where it's successful and the conversation's happening, not only are those students arriving at the workplace with some credentials and some soft skills, on top of which that business is going to train them specifically in the area they want them trained, but they're also going to arrive there as a potential taxpayer who can return to the Commonwealth and return to the community.
Now, to fix these problems, it's going to take a lot of different groups. It's going to take the business community, it's going to take the legislature, and it's going to take the education community. In what areas can each of those communities step up and really help solve this problem?
Jacqueline, I think that's exactly where the State Chamber steps in. The role of the State Chamber is to galvanize all these groups to come together, to provide a venue for us to have those conversations, and then to occasionally kick us and say, you're not moving fast enough. And I'm excited about the business community making their voice heard through the State Chamber.
Now, there's a lot of money being spent within the workforce programs already in place in the state, but nobody really knows where it's going. Obviously, accountability is not part of the current model necessarily. So how do we address that, and where are the state dollars being spent? I mean, obviously it's state and federal, but state dollars, that's a huge part of our general fund.
It is a huge part of our general fund. Over $200 million annually of general fund money is being spent for workforce training. A lot of that is going through KCTCS and career and tech ed centers. I've been an advocate, and you heard me talk about it today, performance-based funding. Post-secondary education especially, our universities need to be looking at a model of post-secondary education funding that's built on outcomes, performance-based funding, and they're moving well along on that conversation. We haven't had a conversation about workforce training being built on outcomes. Predictive analytics, the ability to say we know or we suspect, based on trends, that these industry sectors are going to have opportunities in the years to come. These are certificates that graduates need to hold. Shouldn't we be paying those institutions that are producing those students with those skills? I think we should. So competition's not a bad thing.
Now, obviously, it's going to take everybody coming to the table and discussing these things. We're just in the beginning of this process. But do you think that there's a way to streamline what's already happening? You know, obviously we have so many different sectors. Is there a way to streamline this process?
I think when business and industry speaks loudly, especially at the local level, we had some conversation in the room a moment ago about local communities working with their local KCTCS facility, trying to coordinate what times your class is taught. Can someone work during the day and take classes on the weekend or in the evening? Can those classes, somehow can we find a way that that student who's working in that business gets some credit for the work they're doing in the business? Credit hours in the sense of moving toward a degree. I think it's very possible that that can happen. I think it's going to take a continued effort, and I think it's going to take a continued effort by a lot of people to make this happen over a long period of time. It's a marathon, not a sprint.
Finally, what's the most important thing moving forward in terms of what you want to get accomplished, and what do you want people to know about these problems within the workforce system and what we need to do about them?
Sure. Well, let's start by driving home again the significance of this conversation. If we can get the right people with the right skills in the right job, a lot of our revenue concerns as a state will diminish because we'll have larger tax base, we'll have more profitable corporations, and we'll be able to recruit and grow business and industry in Kentucky, because when you talk to economic development people, the workforce is the critical component to recruiting business and industry. So long term, we know we've got to do this better. Short term, we're going to have to keep our focus on students and outcomes, because you're exactly right. If we have a conversation to the depth that we need to have it, a lot of people are going to feel like we're threatening their turf. And it's going to take bold leadership at the governor, in the governor's office, in the next administration, among legislators, and among business and industry to say this is a conversation, as painful as it may be for some to have, we've got to have it.